dynasties, yes, they have been given breaks on calls. I remember when Brady beat Kansas City in Arrowhead. There was a call in that game, D Ford off. Remember that? I think he was offsides by a centimeter. They got the call, but what did they do with the advantage of the call? Everybody's getting breaks in life. Everybody's getting calls. The dynasties have better players, better coaches, better managed, more focused, more aspirational. They do something with the break. 13 minutes to go. You're blaming a spot. Did you watch your last drive? Did you watch Kansas City when they had to get a first down to kill the clock or expand the clock and end the game, and they had the special play, Samaje Perine? How come you didn't have that play? How come you didn't have that kind of play? Because Kansas City did. There's always an excuse for it. I heard it with the Yankees, the Patriots, the Chiefs, Shaq and Kobe. People always forget that Sacramento series. They forget there was another game. Apparently, people just didn't pay attention to or in Buffalo, Kansas City. There's 13 minutes left. Each team's getting the ball at least once, probably twice. There's 13 minutes left after the call. Make something of it. You forget. If you're really, this is my rule. Whenever fans in the NBA blame the refs for losing a game, I always ask the same question. How many turnovers did you have, and how many free throws did you miss? And if it adds up to 20, I'm like, you gave the ball away 20 times, and you missed, and you had free throw 20 times, 20 potential. So think about in the NBA with a three-point shot. A turnover could be a -3. If you have 10 turnovers, that could be 30 points potentially. Right? Like if you're hitting threes, if you're hot. It wouldn't be because nobody'd go 10 for 10. But like a turnover in the NBA is potentially giving up 3 points. So that's why I don't watch games with fans. The officials are out to get us.
Okay. I like how he doesn't even really answer. Will KC complete the three-peat? But I kind of had this aha moment last night. I was done recording for the day. It was pretty late, and I was making some food, and I was just kind of just thinking about random stuff, and then it like dawned on me. It popped in my head because people really do not like my Kansas City three-peat take. How I keep emphasizing that I don't think a three-peat is that big of a deal. And a lot of people were saying, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but people were saying in one of my more recent three-peat videos when we kind of discussed this, they said, oh, you're trying to downplay this because the Chiefs are, going to potentially do it. And which was like just not true, because I had talked about this actually back in like March, probably whenever they started talking about the Kansas City Chiefs three-peating after they won, last season. I was like, oh, three-peat just doesn't really mean all that much to me. And so that was before I had any idea that the Chiefs would even be in the Super Bowl. And I kept thinking about, why does a three-peat not matter to me, but it seems to matter to so many other people. And again, I'm very firm on it being kind of this forced, constructed narrative. But the reality is this. This is how I was able to really figure it out. And I was like, yes, this is great. This makes sense. We can compare Tom Brady. And again, I'm going to use Tom Brady as a reference point to be very, very clear. Very, very clear. This conversation here, when I use Tom Brady as a reference point, is in no way meant to be like, let's compare Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. GOAT, who's the GOAT, who's not the GOAT. It's just Tom Brady's the best example, and you'll understand why in a second. So this is not anything to do with comparing Patrick Mahomes to Tom Brady, who's better, who's had the better career. It has nothing to do with that. Nothing. But Tom Brady's the best example because of who he is and how long he's played for. But this is the reality. I see Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. I see his entire career right now, and I believe it will continue this way, to be a dynasty. Since 2018, since he took over and was the starting quarterback, I see him, that's when the dynasty starts. And if he's now going to play, and again, we're just going to use made-up numbers, if he just plays 20 years, I essentially see that entire 20-year window, unless he really kind of really trends pretty, downward, kind of almost like an Aaron Rodgers-esque type of thing, where then maybe he's like floating around with other teams, but who knows? That probably won't happen, but you just never know. outside of something like that, and that's where I'm going to compare Tom Brady, more of like a Tom Brady arc. And again, it doesn't mean that, Mahomes has to play until he's, 50 years old, but just where you obviously still have a legitimate chance to win. I see Patrick Mahomes' entire career, so let's just say a 20-year window of it being in the dynasty, of him being an all-time great. So if I'm looking at this 20-year window, 20 seasons, it doesn't matter to me that 3 of his Super Bowl wins are all just squeezed together, in a row, when I'm looking at it as a whole 20-year window. It's the same thing with Tom Brady. I see Tom Brady's entire career as just a timeline of greatness. And sometimes you win Super Bowls, sometimes you don't. And it would not matter. Like, Tom Brady has 7 Super Bowls. There is absolutely a world where he beats the Philadelphia Eagles, but loses to, I don't know, the Eagles back in in 2003 or 2004, whatever it was. And then now he technically has a three-peat, and it somehow makes it better. It doesn't to me, because I'm looking at his career as a whole. I'm looking at this full 20-year window and being like, he was great from here all the way to there. It doesn't matter the way how you kind of like move these rings around it. It doesn't matter, because the whole career was this massive dynastic accomplishment. How things were distributed, it just doesn't hit for me. It just doesn't. Because again, like, when you even look at how great Tom Brady played in that Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles, and again, he lost to like a backup quarterback, like a random backup quarterback, Nick Foles. And if he ends up winning that game, then he's a legend, first player to ever three-peat. And that's another thing. When you think about it, the Patriots and Tom Brady were so close to pulling off that three-peat, and they didn't. And people said, like, oh, three-peats are impossible, never going to happen. And when anyone does it, it's so amazing. It means you're the GOAT. Well, Tom Brady almost pulls off this three-peat, and not even 10 years later, we now have the Kansas City Chiefs going for a three-peat. And this is what I keep saying. That's going to happen again. Everyone keeps acting like if the Chiefs three-peat, it's just going to be this greatest accomplishment and we'll like never see it again. And it's just not true. I'm a firm believer that these things always happen. If it happened with Tom Brady 10 years ago, not even 10 years ago, now there's the potential for Patrick Mahomes to now do it. Again, who's to say 10 years from now that another quarterback that we don't even know really exists yet is going to be in a situation to three-peat? It's just a quite possibly more likely to happen than not. It just is. That is the trajectory that we see these teams and these players going in. So that's why I don't consider, if Patrick Mahomes, if he three-peats, that is now a big stamp of him being the GOAT or, this massive accomplishment, because I see his entire career as the accomplishment itself. That's what it ultimately gets boiled down to for me. And like I've said a million times, and for some reason it's just like Kansas City Chiefs fans just don't, or I should say Mahomes fans don't want to accept it, that if he loses on Sunday, but then wins the Super Bowl next year, or he loses the next 3 Super Bowls, but then wins another 2, that is in no way less impressive to me than him winning 3 in a row. In fact, it's probably more impressive to me, because it's showing that he's not just taking advantage of a time when maybe some of these other teams and players and quarterbacks are just, not ready to win or just not good enough. It actually shows me, it actually is more impressive in a lot of ways to see you win in a more distributed way, because it's showing your sustained greatness rather than just being like, well, yeah, I mean, the Bengals are a mess, the Ravens are a mess, and the Bills are a mess. If anything, it's more impressive to me in a lot of ways. But again, I just think that when Mahomes' career is all said and done, and let's say he plays, again, making up numbers, he plays for 20 seasons and he wins 6 Super Bowls. Having 3 of them just back to back to back, it just won't be a difference to me. Or if they were, a Super Bowl every 2-3 years or something. Because again, his entire career is the dynasty. His entire career is the dynasty. Now, I think the exception to that is if you are more of a flash in the pan type situation, where you kind of put together this great team and this great quarterback, and you can, put it all together. Like, let's say the Philadelphia Eagles, right? They won with Nick Foles in that year, and then they had a chance to actually go back to the NFC Championship game, but one of their wide receivers dropped the ball, literally. And let's just say that they now go on and win back to back, and now they're going for a 3-peat, and then they win that, right? To me, that would have been more of a flash in the pan. Philadelphia Eagles built this awesome concentrated team. Their whole trajectory was not this dynastic run. It was just this concentrated punch where they were able to make magic happen. And they were able to beat Tom Brady twice, actually, like one of those types of situations. I could see that being more impressive than when looking at a trajectory of a literal all-time great. So again, I think even this 3-year window, I think you could also make the argument that if the Chiefs 3-peat, it's more impressive for the Kansas City Chiefs and just for their own individual story that they tell, and for the fans, of course, to be happy about, than when looking back on Patrick Mahomes' career as a whole. It's hard to come up with other random teams that could potentially 3-peat, because without it potentially leading to a special arc. Because I was originally, when I was thinking about this, I was like, oh, what about Jayden Daniels? Let's say Jayden Daniels, next year, he leads this team, the Washington Commanders, to the Super Bowl and wins. And let's say he just goes on a crazy run and wins those, 3 Super Bowls in a row. That's different, because then Jayden Daniels would legitimately enter into the GOAT conversation. And so now it would be okay, it kind of changes it up. So I'm trying to think of other examples of when a team or a quarterback won, 3-peat. The Seattle Seahawks, it might be actually a great example of that. They ended up losing to the Patriots, but they won one. Then they go to the Patriots. They absolutely positively could have won that, obviously. I'll just run the ball, and they win. And then who knows now what happens in that third year. Let's say they win that third year. I mean, and then Russ continues to have the career, and the Seahawks continue to have the success that they had outside of those 2 Super Bowl appearances. It just kind of is a little bit of this, a little bit of that, win some playoff games, lose some, et cetera, et cetera. And now Russ even goes to Pittsburgh and, goes to Denver and all of that type of stuff. But the Seahawks still won those 3 Super Bowls in a row. You would say that was an awesome 3-year window, man. That was awesome. One of the best 3-year windows in the history of the NFL, awesome. And so impressive. And so awesome for the Seattle Seahawks organization to be able to build that team, keep that team, whatever it may be. But I don't know if you would say that is proof and marks the greatness of Russell Wilson. Just not the way I see it. So hopefully that made more sense from kind of how I see it. Again, let me just say this sentence very clearly, because a lot of Patrick Mahomes fans like to purposely mishear me. I'm literally saying that Patrick Mahomes' entire career is the dynasty. That his entire career, the entire timeline of all the various championships, Super Bowls, and accolades, that is the dynasty. And the dynasty for the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes started, from my viewpoint, in 2018. And as long as they continue to be top teams in the NFL and threats to win, the dynasty continues. Even if they continue, let's just say they don't make another Super Bowl for the next 4 years, 5 years, but they're constantly competing. They're constantly in the AFC Championship game. Maybe they even get to the Super Bowl but lose. That's still all part of the dynasty. They could lose the next 3 Super Bowls in a row. That's still part of the dynasty. They could lose the next 3 AFC championship games, the next 5 AFC championship games. That's still part of the dynasty. You know, like that, it's the entire career, and it's the entire mark of just how great and continued excellence that not only Mahomes himself, but then of course, you know, the Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid, Spags, etc. achieve. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and the potential to complete the three-peat? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.